Good morning, and welcome to the rule hearing regarding Florida Administrative Code 65G-14, Qualified Organizations and Waiver Support Coordination. My name is Nathan Koch. My title with the agency is Deputy General Counsel, and I will be presiding over today's hearing. This hearing is being recorded. Today is January 20th, 2021, and the time is 10:04 a.m. Eastern. And we are meeting online and over the phone. This hearing is being held to provide members of the public with the opportunity to give commentary and input on these proposed rules. Specifically, the agency is seeking suggested changes to the language and proposed solutions to any perceived issues in the proposed rule language or forms. The notice of proposed rule was published on January 21 in Volume 47, Issue Number 3 of the Florida Administrative Register, and is also posted on the agency's website on the Public Notices page. The reference forms are also available on the agency's website. The purpose of these proposed rules is to implement a portion of the recent statutory changes adopted by Chapter 2020-71 Laws of Florida. The agency realized this is a paradigm shift for support coordination and that many of you have concerns about these changes. Many people from the agency are here today to listen to those concerns and suggested solutions. Rulemaking is a collaborative process between an agency and the public. The agency takes this partnership seriously and is here to listen to you. The agency has already received a substantial number of comments from 2 prior workshops, and revisions have been made based on these comments. In summary, your comments matter and this collaboration matters. The agency appreciates your involvement in this hearing today. Before we begin, I'd like to go through a few simple instructions that will help this rule hearing proceed smoothly today. After my opening remarks, we will have the agency hearing representatives introduce themselves, and then we will open up the floor for public commentary on the rules. At the time of registration, you are each asked if you wish to speak at this hearing. Based on that registration, we have 34 speakers registered today. We will begin with comments from people who registered to speak. If you wish to speak at this hearing but did not register to speak, then please use the raise your hand feature in the webinar controls and wait patiently to be called on. Or you may wish to type your question in the question box of the webinar controls. We will take additional speakers and messages as time permits. If we are unable to address your comment on the record today, we will still take into consideration. We ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. In the interest of time, if you want to provide commentary that mirrors commentary provided previously, you could just let us know that you agree with the previous comments and clarify which comments specifically you agree with. Again, the agency is interested in your input on these rules that the agency will implement pursuant to statutory requirements in a way that meets the needs of our clients and providers. This is your opportunity to help the agency improve these proposed rules. The agency will listen to your feedback and consider the concerns and ideas you have raised. Following the hearing, the agency will accept written comments until Friday, January 22nd, 2021, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can email your written comments to Danielle Thompson at danielle.thompson@apdcares.org. And the spelling of that is DANIELLE@apdcares.org. Ms. Thompson's email address can also be found in the notice of proposed rule and on the webinar screen. At this time, I'd like to have each agency representative introduce herself and provide their title for the record. We can begin with Ms. Dahl.
Good morning, Lynn Daw, Chief of Provider Supports.
All right, and next we have Ms. Galise.
Good morning, this is Claire Galise, and I work in operations in the Bureau of Provider Support.
Thank you. And next we have Ms. Torres.
Good morning, this is Megan Torres. I am the Program Administrator for Quality Improvement in our Operations Bureau of Provider Supports.
Thank you. Okay, let's get started with any public comments. And before providing us your comments, please ensure that your name and affiliation is stated on the record. Our first speaker today is Ryan Chandler with Association of Support Coordination Agencies, and following Mr. Chandler is Regina Pageant with Support Unlimited Incorporated. So one moment, Mr. Chandler, I'll unmute your line and you can give your comment. Just one moment. Okay, Ryan Chandler, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment.
Good morning, this is Ryan Chandler, and I'm representing the Agency for Support Coordination Agencies. And a few of our main concerns. First would be, and I'll submit more detailed concerns in writing to Danielle Thompson, but one of our main concerns is the classification of W-2 employees versus 1099 employees, and IRS rules that designate 1099 employees as having a different relationship and less control over the agency would have over them, which somewhat defeats the purpose of the qualified organization and being able to have control over their W-2s and what their actions and service to our clients. Another concern would be the mentorship and having to have 3 years working as a waiver support coordinator. We feel that this is a little too long and as far as experience goes, and also requiring a coordinator to shadow a qualified mentor for 90 days, and some of the benchmarks that are listed there. But as far as I will be submitting the concerns in more detail in writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Chandler. And again, if you have any proposed rule language that you'd like to change, we would appreciate you include that in your comments that you submit.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we will move to Regina Pageant with Support Unlimited Incorporated. And after Ms. Pageant, we will move to Veronica Neria, who is a waiver support coordinator. So one moment, Ms. Pageant, while I unmute your line. Okay, Ms. Pageant, you can be.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be able to share today and ask questions. I just wanted to find out the revisions that have been made.
Ms. Pageant? Ms. Pageant, yes. I'm sorry. Your microphone is coming a little blurry. If you could actually back away from the microphone a little bit, we could probably hear you a little better. So
okay, is that better?
A little bit, maybe a little further. I'm sorry. We're just trying to make sure we all hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I wanted to just say good morning. Thank you for allowing us to be able to make comments today. I wanted to know, has there been any revisions published based on the comments and the suggested changes from before that we might be able to review? And in that, have there been any definition for the employee section of the chapter rules or the proposed language for the changes in the statute? And do you have any idea when we will have a firm, some firm information as to what it is that this is to be and what it should look like for us? And those are my questions.
So Ms. Pageant, I just want to make sure we understood you clearly. You were asking if there's any other, and I couldn't hear what you said, any other what published from before that you were able to view?
If there are any revisions that the agency or this body may have made from previous hearings.
Yes, ma'am. So again, this is Nathan Koch with the agency. The agency did publish a notice of development, which included draft rule language. And this most recently, if you actually see the website on the webinar controls, that has the notice of proposed rule published there, and you can compare the two language changes between them. We actually worked a substantial number of revisions based on the two prior workshops we received, and you can see the difference on that website.
Okay, and then my next question had to do with any concrete dates as to when APD or this body will have the final version available?
Okay, so your question is if we have any concrete dates on the final version of the rule text, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am. So we are going through the rulemaking process now. Based on our feedback we received today, we may change some of the language. So depending on what happens today will determine what happens in the future. The agency is working as quickly as possible. We also have to follow all the statutory requirements to publish rules appropriately. It's difficult for me. I don't have a crystal ball, so it's difficult for me to tell you when the final language will be available, but we're working as quickly as we possibly can. And the language we currently have is the agency's proposed language. So, absent any other change or any other comments, that would be the language we're moving forward with. So that's the whole purpose of today, is to provide the public comment, the opportunity for public comment on those rules.
Okay, and my final question is, with the process of this, how it is to be rolled out with the final version, will qualifying agencies, will they have to complete the trainings prior to applying for a qualified agency?
So Ms. Paget, I understand your question to be, will the qualified organizations be required to complete the training that's being pushed out currently by the agency?
Correct. For qualifying agencies, yes. Will that have to be completed before you submit your qualifying agency application?
Okay, and I'll turn to my panelists and see if they have a.
If I understood the question correctly, will the qualified organizations need to complete the required training that is found in the 65G-14, which is a training rule? At the point in time that we will begin accepting the applications, the QO application can be submitted and with the training that those particular agencies have already received. When the training rule is finalized and that training is complete, then there will be a requirement for those individuals as part of that QO to complete the level 1 training and the competency associated evaluation. Those existing support coordinators, however, will not be required to complete the level 2 training, which is now referred to as region-specific training, nor the associated competency assessment.
Thank you for sharing that information. But can you make it a little clearer for me? Because I wasn't really understanding and making sure that the question that I asked was answered. I understand about the QO training too, which is the region training. Isn't required for current support coordinators who've already taken it. But as it applies to the qualifying for support coordinators to meet the new rule, will that training be required before we have to submit the qualifying agency application? And if you said that, forgive me because I didn't really hear that part.
Okay, let me just repeat myself. I apologize if I wasn't clear before. At the point in time that the agency begins accepting the applications for the qualified organizations, the qualified organization can submit that application without anyone having taken the level 1 training, because that has not been finalized. That is a separate rule. That is 65G-14. So the applications will be accepted prior to that point. At the point in time that the training rule is finalized, the support coordinators will be required to complete the level 1 training and the associated competency assessment. However, existing support coordinators will not have to complete the level 2 training, which is now referred to as region-specific training, nor take the associated competency evaluation.
Okay, that makes it clear. Thank you so much for that.
Very welcome.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Paget. Okay, next we will move to Veronica Neria, who's a waiver support coordinator. And after Ms. Neria will be Lazina Joyner with Joyful Support Services Incorporated. So one moment, Ms. Neria, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Neria, you may proceed.
Okay, I just want to say, I'm Veronica Neria. I'm a solo waiver support coordinator. I agree with Ryan regarding the classification versus W-2 versus 1099 and the mentorship. And also, as the person that was speaking earlier, I didn't see who was speaking, but she said that those that have been a coordinator a long time will not have to take level 2. I didn't see that in the notice of proposals. It's not spelled out. So that's something that we may need to put in there, clear as mud. When I read it, it doesn't say that specifically. Unless I overlooked it. So, so that I'm looking at it, so that's something to look at, because it doesn't say that they're deemed. It just doesn't. Yeah. As I look through on page 4, I guess it doesn't specifically say those that have been a long time coordinator don't have to take level 2 or the other competency. So if that could be added clear as mud, that would be great.
And Neria, just for the record, next week on Wednesday, we have a Chapter 10 hearing where all these issues will be discussed, but the agency will definitely take that into consideration. And today's real focus is on Chapter 14, which relates to the qualified organization rules. But I just want to make sure everyone was aware. Next Wednesday.
I looked at the wrong one then. Okay, then I yeah, you're right. It doesn't say 14 on here. I printed out and reviewed the wrong one. But I have till the 22nd to put my comments online.
Yes, ma'am. You can submit your comments in writing to the agency until 5 p.m. Friday. The email address to submit your comments are on the screen.
Okay, and then another question. So the hearing for 65G-10 is next Wednesday.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And I'm still listening. I will propose my questions and stuff after. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Ms. Neria, if you did have proposed language changes for the rule relating to the classification of 1099 versus W-2, the agency would appreciate receiving that.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we will move to Lazina Joyner with Joyful Support Services Incorporated. And after Ms. Joyner will be Nancy Collin with NA Collin Incorporated. So, one moment, Ms. Joyner, while I unmute your line. Oh, looks like Ms. Joyner has left the call. So next, again, we will move to Ms. Collin, and after Ms. Collin will be Valicia Carswell with Val Carswell Support Coordination. So Ms. Collin, one moment while I unmute your line. Okay, Ms. Collin, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And again, Nancy Collin, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Next, we will have Valencia Carswell with Val Carswell Support Coordination. And after Ms. Carswell will be Bradley Hunt with Exceptional Partners Incorporated. So one moment, Ms. Carswell, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Carswell, you're unmuted.
Good morning. I would just want to ask a question concerning the qualified organizations. When the qualified organizations begin to submit their applications, is there a time frame which the region will have to process each of the applications, because there could be several hundred applications coming into each region? So do you have a time frame which you would say a region should have this done, or do you have a contact person who will be able to answer any questions that a qualified organization is submitting to see where they are in the process?
Good morning. Yes, we will be accepting those applications in the near future, and we'll be posting that date that we will start accepting the applications. Just to let you guys know, there is a section now dedicated on the Agency for Persons with Disabilities website specifically for qualified organizations, and we have posted, effective yesterday afternoon, a series of frequently asked questions that we have been receiving through the course of the rule development. We also are going to set up dedicated mailboxes for the separate regions, and the agency is working very closely with the regions on the processing of these applications. In addition to posting the application document itself on the section of the website based on qualified organizations, there will also be a number of other documents that we believe will be helpful to the qualified organizations as they submit these applications, and those include templates for the mentoring program, the code of ethics, the disciplinary process, and the policies and procedures. qualified organizations are able to use those templates as they're developed by the agency as attachments to the applications, or can take those templates and modify them for your own use for your agency. We also have developed checklists for the regions to use as they process these applications. Those checklists will be returned to the qualified organizations if there are any missing documents or items that are required for the application. We believe in doing this. This will help expedite the application review process. We also want to make it clear that based on the recommendations that we had in the previous rule workshops, that existing waiver support coordinators will not need to submit a new application to the agency for processing. There will be an application specifically for the qualified organization, but we will not be requiring that the support coordinators associated with those qualified organizations are also submitting new applications. We believe that also will assist in the review process for the applications. And we are encouraging those existing agencies and those solo support coordinators who are wanting to join together to develop qualified organizations to submit those to the associated regional offices as soon as we begin accepting the applications. We are also working very closely with the regions on tracking applications as they come in and the disposition of those applications to make sure that they're processed timely. The regions are also going to be prioritizing those qualified organization applications for processing.
That ends my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carswell. All right. One moment. So next we will move to Bradley Hunt with Exceptional Partners Incorporated, and after Mr. Hunt will be Marlene Etienne with Shiloh Support Services Incorporated. So one moment, Mr. Hunt, while I unmute your line. All right, Mr. Hunt, we should be able to hear you now.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Brad Hunt. I am the Director of Exceptional Partners. I have a couple of comments, but I don't want to be duplicative of previous comments, but I want to support some of what was said. I agree with Ryan Chandler's comments that the 3-year requirement or recommendation for the mentor's experience is too high, and recommend the agency consider a minimum of 2 years instead of the 3. I just from personal experience have coordinators that have been with me for longer than that probably wouldn't make good mentors, and I have folks that have been with me less than that would be good mentors. So that gives the qualified organization a little bit more discretion over who they select as their mentors. Also, what I would like some clarification on the 90-day supervision period for mentees. Is it the agency's intent that 100% of the time or 100% of the client contacts with the mentee be with a mentor under direct supervision? So if someone could address that question, I would appreciate that. And you've answered my other question already about accepting applications. Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, based on the feedback that we received from the last workshop, we did make some changes to the mentoring requirements, allowing those support coordinators who join a qualified organization who had prior experience in being a support coordinator, that their time frame that they had to be under the mentoring program can be reduced if that support coordinator can provide proof of those activities that are required on the mentoring checklist to provide documentation of that. That will reduce that time frame for those mentees. We also made the change that those people that are under a mentoring requirement are allowed to have a caseload. That was feedback that we got very clearly from you guys in the last workshop. In answer to your question about the oversight for those people that are under mentorship, if they are conducting activities, we do want there to be oversight from the mentor in the completion of those activities with the caseload that they have.
And Mr. Hunt.
Yes, so yeah, my question is, and I understand the need for supervision, particularly for everyone, but particularly for the new folks. My question more directly is, under the direct observation for 100% of the contacts, or a more distant supervision?
There needs to be observation on the part of the mentor during those activities. And if you had any, I believe you had some recommended changes related to the time frame for which someone could become a mentor. So if you have any comments on that or any other recommended language changes, we'd certainly be happy to look at those.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Next, we will move on to Ms. Ateen with Shiloh Support Services, LLC. And after Ms. Ateen will be Hilda Rocha with Coordinating Services, Incorporated. So one moment, Ms. Ateen, while I unmute your line. All right, Marlene Ateen, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute with your controls, you can provide your comment.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Proceed.
Oh, okay. Actually, the question I have, someone already asked it, so thank you very much.
Thank you. We will move on. All right, next we have Hilda Rocha with Coordinating Services, Incorporated, and after Ms. Rocha will be Carrie Montez with Diverse Family Solutions. So one moment, Ms. Rocha, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Rocha, you are self-muted. If you use the controls to unmute yourself, you can provide comment. And again, Hilda Rocha, you are self-muted. If you use the controls, you can unmute yourself and provide comment. Okay, we will move on. Next, we have Carrie Montanez with Diverse Family Solutions. And after Ms. Montanez, we have Roy Ann Smith with Harris Support Services, Incorporated. So one moment, Ms. Montanez, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Montanez, we should be able to hear you now.
Hi, this is Carrie Montanez with Diverse Family Solutions. I just had two questions. My first one is that, do we have a proposed date as to when all these forms are going to be available to give us time to fill out and get everything together to submit to APD to become a qualified agency? Hello?
Yes, Ms. Montanez. And your second question?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Oh, my second question is that due to the fact that we're not going to be allowing solo coordinators, if we don't have enough qualified agencies with all of these clients, are they going to allow for a temporary increase in caseloads to accommodate all of our clients?
Okay, one moment.
Good morning, Ms. Martinez. This is Megan Torres. To answer your first question regarding the proposed date for the forms to be submitted, depending on what occurs during this meeting, we are looking to have those forms available on our website for proposed QOs to complete, to use our templates that Ms. Daw has also spoke of this morning. On our website. And so we'll make those available as soon as possible, and we will be letting you know when we'll be able to accept those qualified organization applications. We are looking to have those applications accepted as soon as we possibly can. And of course, as we've mentioned earlier this morning, we do have several toolkits and tools, templates for different policies and procedures, code of ethics, disciplinary processes, and mentoring programs to assist any proposed qualified organization in their efforts, in their application to help expedite it. So that is, we don't have a firm date, but we are looking as soon as possible. We do have that website live. We don't have those templates and resources up at this time, but we should within the next, well, of course, depending upon what occurs during this meeting. If all goes well, we should have that by the end of the month present for you guys to use. And your second question was related to a temporary increase in caseload. The agency will be working and monitoring the approval of our qualified organizations and the caseload sizes, and if necessary, we will be working with our regions, our qualified organizations, to ensure all of our consumers do have the appropriate support.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Torres. We can next move on to Roy Ann Smith with Harris Support Services Incorporated, and after Ms. Smith will be Nicole Dawkins with Cornerstone Supports and Consulting LLC. So one moment, Ms. Smith, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Smith, you are self-muted. If you use your controls, oh, looks like you unmuted. Ms. Smith, we should be able to hear you now.
Hello?
Yeah.
And Ms. Smith, it looks like you've joined with 2 different accounts somehow, and that may be why we just received feedback.
Okay.
Maybe try one more time. Meaning you go ahead and speak and see if that works.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Roy Ann Smith. I'm a waiver support coordinator with Harris Support Services. I have several questions this morning. Just the first one is, how many cases can the mentor have in total?
We are not limiting the number of cases that a mentor can have up to the maximum that is allowed in the iBudget handbook.
Okay, thank you. And then also for a new WSC, will the mentor, will the mentee have a caseload? And if not, then how will they be paid during their mentorship?
Based on the feedback that we received in the last workshop, we did change the language that do allow a mentee to have a caseload during the mentoring period.
And then did you guys have a maximum for them or a minimum amount of cases?
That is a decision that the qualified organization will make. We're not putting a maximum on the mentees.
And then can they be paid? Because they're, yeah, yes, because they're working a caseload. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Ms. Dahl, did you want to answer whether mentees can be paid?
That is a decision of the qualified organization. I mean, if they have a caseload, then the qualified organization would be billing for those services that are being rendered by that mentee.
Correct. And I would also say that payment to employees are under the Department of Labor federal jurisdiction, so that every organization would have to follow those authorities in addition to the Chapter 14 in Florida statute. So we will move on. Next, we have Nicole Dawkins with Cornerstone Supports and Consulting LLC, and after we will return back to Lazina Joyner with Joyful Support Services. So Ms. Dawkins, one moment while I unmute your line. And Ms. Dawkins, you are self-muted. There you go. You can proceed.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Dawkins. I'm with Cornerstone Support and Consulting, LLC. And pretty much my questions have been brought up already, because I see like that is really the hot button right now with the way the language is written. The two things being the 1099 versus W-4 and the hours. Being an owner, of course, you can work as much as you need to work because you're the owner. But when you've hired W-4s, you're really limited on how much you can work them without having to pay overtime. And the current rate that we receive, because we don't have a difference between solo and agencies, you really can't afford to pay overtime over those 40 hours. So that really, when you guys make that decision, it has to be clear on how that's going to be set up, but it also has to be kept in mind for overtime pay, because if someone does have to go out, the supervisor or so on, for overtime hours because there is a crisis with a client, which often happens in the caseload, that has to be taken into consideration. And then the question I had with the mentor. So we're looking at the 3 years. A couple of individuals has already brought up that 3 years is astronomical. But what about language as far as it being congruent 3 years? For instance, if we have someone who decided at this moment and they're a solo and they've been in it for 15 years or so that they're not going to continue, they're going to another field, but let's say come in November, they decide that, you know what, I'm going to go back to support coordination and I'm going to join a qualified agency. Can we still pull that they've had, you know, a certain amount of years previously before qualified organizations came into being, and use that experience as qualification as a mentor? Thank you.
The decision about whether a qualified organization wants to choose to hire employees or hire 1099 workers is a decision of the qualified organization. Any qualified organization has to make sure that they're in compliance with all rules and statutes, including those required through the Internal Revenue Service. In answer to your question about the mentorship in the 3 years, if you have any comments about that, as well as any comments about the allowance of someone who has been a support coordinator, left and wants to come back serving in that mentorship capacity, please be sure to propose any suggested changes to the language for us to consider.
Thank you, Ms. Dawkins. And next we will move to Lazina Joyner with Joyful Support Services Incorporated. And after Ms. Joyner, we will move to Emilia Hernandez, who's a solo waiver support coordinator. So one moment with Ms. Joyner. Okay, Ms. Joyner, you're unmuted. You may proceed.
Hi, how are you doing? Good morning. My comment was similar to what she just said. Transitioning support coordinators that were previously a support coordinator and had left the company for about a year or two, they're right now requiring them to retake the WSC certification class over again, but they had over 5, some have longer experience. Does it have to be this way, or can they transition back in without having to pay that $700 or $800 to take over the WSC course again?
Just to clarify, when the 65G-10 training rule requirement that we referenced earlier, when that is finalized, the requirement for the level 1 training is an online training through Train Florida. There is no fee associated with a support coordinator taking that training, nor the accompanying competency-based assessment. Any support coordinator that leaves support coordination and returns to want to render that service would be treated as a new hire and would have to complete that level 1 training. The level 1 training is a requirement for all support coordinators, those existing support coordinators and any new support coordinators who are hired. Again, the only change to that would be for existing support coordinators that remain active would not be required to complete the second phase of training, which is level 2, or what is now referred to as region-specific training, and the associated assessment to that. That would be limited to brand new support coordinators who want to become enrolled to render support coordination services, or could be a requirement as part of a corrective action plan for support coordinator. But again, just to clarify, under the training rules, 65G-10, the level 1 training, which now is considered statewide training where there is an associated fee, there will be no fee in the level 1 training.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl, and thank you, Ms. Joyner, for the question. Next, we will move to Emilia Hernandez as a waiver support coordinator, and after Ms. Hernandez will be Penny Schumann. One moment, Ms. Hernandez. All right, Ms. Hernandez, you're unmuted.
I'm so sorry, I almost cannot talk because I'm COVID-19 and try to hear all the conversation and question, and most of my questions are answering with the question before.
Excellent. So do you have any other questions or comments?
For right now, the really concern is how much time we're gonna have to do this application before July 2021. What gonna be the time frame to submit the application? Do you know that already?
Good morning, Ms. Hernandez. This is Megan Torres. We will be accepting the application soon. We don't have an exact date, but we are working fast and furious to allow for as much time for you all to complete, submit, and for APD to process these qualified organization applications. Again, we are going to have all of this posted on our website, and we've got some toolkits as well as some templates for some of the required documents that are needed for some assistance for some QOs that perhaps maybe would like to use some of those templates. And then we're also going to be accepting those as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. And this is also depending on the rule promulgation. So okay, next we have Penny Schumann. And I'm not sure your affiliation, Ms. Schumann, so if you could state that for the record. And after Ms. Schumann will be Amanda Johnson with Pathway Support Coordination. So one moment, Ms. Schumann.
You can hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you may proceed.
Hi. Okay, I am a solo provider, Penny Schumann. And my question is, well, I agree with the mentorship that Mr. Chandler brought up. Also, my question is, in the iBudget handbook, it says that it defines agency as 2 individuals must have the W-2 forms, and the rest could be 1099s. My question is, does a qualified organization mandate that we have that definition in place, like 2 people must have W-2 forms and the rest be 1099s if we're forming a qualified organization with all solo support coordinators? Or can all 4 support coordinators or more be 1099s? Is it mandated that 2 of them have to be a W-2 to be called an agency? Or does it have to be, it's not an agency if there's not 2 W-2 form individuals there, but would that still qualify if everybody has a 1099?
Good morning. The Chapter 2071 Laws of Florida, this rule that we're talking about today, does not mandate whether or not W-2 employees or 1099 employees exist. So APD does not intend to require or has a definition of that requirement for W-2s or 1099s. All of the qualified organizations will have to comply with all of the requirements set in rules and statutes, both at the state and the federal level. So, that is really up to the qualified organization and how they want to structure their business.
That also includes the definition following the IRS rules about partnership. That would be sufficient for a qualified organization.
That is correct.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you very much. That was my question.
I apologize, that was on mute. Ms. Johnson no longer has a question, so we will move on to Patty Rendon with the Columbus organization. And after Ms. Rendon, we will move to Daniel Crandall with Crandall Medical Consulting, LLC. So one moment, Ms. Rendon, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Rendon, you are self-muted. There you go.
Good morning, Patty Rendon with the Columbus organization. I'm going to first start out with a few comments regarding some of the attachments to the rule. One being the application. It appears that the current application that's being up for rule will be used for both the qualified organization as well as subsequent waiver support coordinator enrollees after a qualified organization. I would recommend that the beginning of the qualified organization application include where it's of solos and owner at the beginning, that would have a place of, I'm assuming the owner for the qualified organization, and then the owner being the owner of the Medicaid number when we're applying as a solo. I'm sorry, when we're applying as an individual within the qualified organization. It also states in the application for the geographical provisions. I understand that the application for the qualified organization will be submitted to the home region, but then any additional applications for the waiver support coordinators as they enroll, will that only go to the home region following? That's question number one. Question number two, it does say that if the designated, if owner is also a waiver support coordinator, you can skip to section 5. However, I do not believe you can. You still need to make mention in section 2, what region is this individual you are serving in. And then again in section 4, whether you intend to be a waiver support coordinator of only waiver services or you also a consultant under the CDC. Under the required documentations, I would suggest that we section off whether we are applying as a qualified organization or whether or not these documents are required for an individual waiver support coordinator from a qualified organization. If the application remains as it is, it appears that each and every time an individual support coordinator applies under a qualified organization, it's not specific to only what that waiver support coordinator will need to provide. Second, it appears that you will be applying with this application once when you hire a new support coordinator, and then once the provider listing is submitted in Medicaid and a Medicaid number is rendered, that you would resubmit this application again to complete sections 8 and 9, but it's unclear. I'm only going off assumption. So I would suggest we have some clarity with the application. As far as the rule 65G-14, on page 4, 65G-14-002, section 3C, I would recommend this organization that there be a central calendar for all waiver support coordinator meetings within all 6 regions. Now that you are requiring all these supervisors, managers, owners, et cetera, to attend 6 meetings throughout the year, and if we are serving in various regions, one must be in each region, it will be imperative that their meetings do not overlap with each other. So if there's a central calendar of when the meetings are, it can be better planned by all organizations. In section 65G-14-002-4A, I would suggest the language be changed to the review of all qualified organization applicants for 90 days, and that we add that the agency review of an application of a qualified organization support coordinator only be a 30 days from the receipt of the application. Therefore, we're suggesting that the handbook, we stay within compliance of the handbook of being able to only carry over for that minimum of 60 days. If it takes 90 days for the application to return, we will be out of compliance for the handbook. So we're asking for it to be 90 days for qualified application and organization, and for 30 days for an APD individual waiver support coordinator application under a qualified organization. Under 65G-14-002 section 7, I would also request that the language be changed from 90 days of if they fall below 4 waiver support coordinators to 60 days. Therefore, again, staying within compliance of the current handbook of going over 45 cases for a minimum of 60 days. If it was 90 days, it would be out of compliance with current handbook guidelines. I would also suggest that in 65G-14-002 section 7, section 7, that the new guidelines in the frequently asked questions completely conflicts with this language. In the language in the rule, it specifically says employ 4 or more support coordinators. And yet in the frequently asked questions, when asked if a subcontractor would be considered as 4 or more, it was answered as yes. That is a complete contradiction to the ruling. And employment means that there's a W-2 and not a subcontractor or a 1099 employee. So this language does conflict with your frequently asked questions. I would also agree that in section 65G-14, 0043, section 4D, that the language be changed from 3 years as a waiver support coordinator to 2 years as a waiver support coordinator. The qualified organization is taking responsibility for both the mentor and the mentee. And so that qualified organization has already made a judgment that that mentor is sufficient and proficient in the job to be able to be a mentee. I thank you for the opportunity, and we'll send in written comments by Friday.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brendan. And we look forward to those comments. And remember, if you do have any suggested rule language changes, if you could please provide that, that would assist us. Thank you. All right. I don't think our panelists have anything in response. So we will move on to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The one thing I was going to clarify is that there actually is a separate application for the individual support coordinators that is in the iBudget handbook.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next we will move to Daniel Crandall with Crandall Medical Consulting, LLC. And after Mr. Crandall will be Pam Rose with Colette Walker Services, Incorporated. So one moment, Mr. Crandall, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Crandall.
Hi, yeah, this is Dan Crandall, Waiver Support Coordinator. The questions I had have basically been pretty much answered. I agree with the wordage in there about employee versus independent contractor. I think that needs to be clarified. I think that you know, this whole process has been a you know, a pretty stressful process, I would say, for every waiver support coordinator, agencies and solos. And I think the sooner that we have something that we can really look at, so that we can make decisions about how we're going to structure things, you know, is really important. You know, and just having it laid out, you know, in a definitive sense, so we can move forward, would be, you know, would be extremely helpful. And really, that's about it. But thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crandall? And just to respond, the agency is working as quickly as possible to provide the rule into adoption, as well as additional instruction of how to become a QO. Next will be Pam Rose with Colette Walker Services, Incorporated. And after Ms. Rose will be Pedro Valdez. One moment, Ms. Rose, while I unmute your line. And Ms. Rose, there seems to be some technical difficulties. It looks like Ms. Rose has just went offline, so we can return to her at a later time. So next we will move to Pedro Valdez. If you could state your affiliation, Mr. Valdez, when we unmute you. One moment. Mr. Valdez, you are self-muted. If you could use the controls to take yourself off mute. Again, Pedro Valdez, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you can provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Next, we have Roberto Pyrie with Advanced Support Coordination and Services Incorporated. And after Mr. Pyrie is Arlene Taylor with People Systems. So one moment, Roberto Pyrie, while I unmute your line. All right, Mr. Pyrie, we should be able to hear you.
Good morning to everybody. Really, I don't have any question that occurs to me right now. I've been listening to all the question and answers. If I get any question, I will email Danielle Thompson. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Okay.
Thank you. All right, next we will move to Arlene Taylor with People Systems, and after Ms. Taylor will be Jajana Vogel. All right, one moment. Ms. Taylor, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Arlene Taylor, you're unmuted. Arlene Taylor, we should be able to hear you. You can go ahead and proceed with your comment. Okay, Ms. Taylor, there may be an issue with your microphone. You are unmuted. So maybe what we can do is return to you at the end. So I will go ahead and mute you back. All right, next we will move to Jajana Vogel. And if you, Ms. Vogel, if you could state your affiliation for the record. And after Ms. Vogel is Dawanda Palmore. Jajana Vogel, you are self-muted. If you could use the controls to take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And again, Ms. Vogel, you are self-muted. If you would use the controls to take yourself off mute, you could provide comment. Okay, we will move on. Next, we have Dawanda Paramore with Exceptional Lives by R&D Palmore, LLC. And after Ms. Palmore is Estelle Marshall with MJ Guiding Others, LLC. So one moment, Ms. Palmore, while I unmute you. All right, Ms. Palmore, you are oh, there you go. You may proceed.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Great, thanks for allowing me to speak. Honestly, most of my questions have already been answered. I appreciate the frequently asked questions that was posted. Actually, I got it today on the APD Care site. For the most part, I agree with the first speaker regarding obviously the 1099 versus the W-2s. That would be very, very great to get 100% clarity on that. And I think we did, as well as most of the comments that Ms. Rendon spoke to regarding the conflicting information between the FAQ as well regarding what's already stated. To continue with Ms. Rendon, to have the 60-day vice 90-day match up, that would be great. Great help for us to make sure that we are staying compliant according to what is written. Other than that, I believe that would be it, and I look forward to getting the timelines and all the information regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palmore. All right, next we will move Estelle Marshall with MJ Guiding Others, LLC. And after Ms. Marshall will be Jose Derosier. So one moment, Ms. Marshall, will I unmute your line? All right, Ms. Marshall, you are set. Oh, you may proceed.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Proceed.
That's good. My name is Estelle Marshall. I go by MJ Marshall, Waiver Support Coordinator. Pretty much like well, a lot of my questions have been answered already. So I do have a suggestion, if you all could consider this. Based on learning when we were to create a qualified organization last year, when we found out it looked very doable. But because we support coordinators have been impacted by COVID-19 as well, you know, with our cases, I find while networking that a lot of us had to we increased services for clients. The workload has increased. It sounds like a case by case situation. Now, I know that you all said that there would be no extension. However, I would suggest that maybe you consider addendum added following, let's say, maybe a personal statement, how COVID-19 has impacted what we do first as support coordinators, then the time that we put into forming the qualified organizations, how it's impacted us, and maybe submit it and get a response from you all about that for approval. The suggestion may be a 30-day extension. That is my suggestion to you all. And that's it.
Ms. Marshall, thank you so much for your comment. We'll take that into consideration.
Okay, next we will move on to Jose Durozier. And if you could state your affiliation, Ms. Duzier. And after Ms. Duzier will be Janet Batet with Agora Support and Consulting Services. So one moment, Ms. Durozier. All right, Ms. Durozier, you are self-muted. If you could use your controls to take yourself off mute, provide your comment. Again, Mr. Rozier, you are self-muted. If you could use the controls to take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Next, we have Janet Batet with Agora Support and Consulting Services. And after Ms. Batet is Erica Lynn with Safe Harbor Support Coordination. One moment, Ms. Batet. All right, Ms. Batet, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute using the controls, you can provide your comment.
Yes, hi, good morning. Thank you, everybody. I would like to know if you have a time frame when the application will be available for the applying organizations.
Good morning. We are going to make the application and all supporting documents available as quickly as possible, assuming we still have to go through the rule promulgation process. And so depending on the feedback that we receive during this rule hearing, that may impact the timeframes, but again, we are working to make that application and all of the varying support tools available to you all on our website as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Batet and Ms. Torres. Next, we have Erica Lynn with Safe Harbor Support Coordination, and then we'll follow back up with Pam Rose. So one moment, Ms. Lynn, while I unmute you. All right, Ms. Lynn, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute using the controls, you may provide your comment. And again, Miss Erica Lynn, you are self-muted. If you could use the controls and take yourself off mute, you could provide comment. And Ms. Lynn, it does look like you did submit a question just now, so maybe you're foregoing your opportunity to speak. We will, if time permits, we'll address your question, and we can go ahead and move on since you're not taking yourself off mute. Next, let me follow back up with Pam Rose. One moment. All right, Ms. Rose is no longer on the line. Next, we will follow up with Arlene Taylor. All right, Ms. Taylor, you are unmuted again. See if you can provide your comments now. And again, Ms. Taylor, you're unmuted. You may be having a problem with your microphone. What you could do is either submit your questions in writing using the webinar controls, or the agency's leaving the record open for 2 days to close of business Friday at 5 p.m. And you can submit your comments to us that way. So Ms. Taylor, seeing that we can't hear you, we will move on. And that concludes the portion of the hearing where all the pre-registered individuals have spoken or had an opportunity to speak. Next, we will move to the written questions that have been submitted during this hearing. The first question that we've received is, can solo waiver support coordinators start process of joining a QO but remain solo until July 1st so that our pay cut doesn't start until July 1st? So I'll turn to my panelists now.
So we would encourage those individuals that are solo support coordinators to start making decisions and arrangements about what will happen as of July 1st, whether that is working with an agency and looking to be hired by that agency who is applying to be a qualified organization, or if there are a group of solo support coordinators who want to join together in the process of developing and becoming a qualified organization themselves. So those are some decisions that support coordinators need to be making. And I just want to say that we understand that this is a very stressful time for support coordinators with some substantive changes with how the service is currently rendered. And so we will be talking very closely, working very closely at the regional level with the support coordinators about those decisions that they are making. I know there's a great deal of concern about us being able to process these applications timely. Ultimately, we just need to make sure that as of July 1st, that all the individuals served through the waiver are served through a support coordinator that is part of a qualified organization. So it will require some close collaboration on the part of the fellow providers in making sure that they make the best decision for them. And some of these documents and tools that we have referenced many times during this hearing, we believe will be helpful for you as you're making those decisions. And we think as a result, the processing of the applications themselves will be quicker, which will give individuals more time. We'll be asking the regions to work very closely with their support coordinators as soon as possible in determining what your particular plan is going forward before the July 1st implementation.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Our next question, can you please verify that the intention is the qualified organizations would only include employees and not contracted workers based on the wording of 65G-14.002 qualifications?
Again, as we've referenced before, the 2020-71 laws of Florida does not mandate W-2 employees. APD does not intend to require W-2 employees. That is the decision of the specific qualified organization about how they wish to structure business from a business standpoint of whether the qualified organization chooses to hire only W-2 employees, 1099 workers, or a combination of each.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Our next question is, do the 4 support coordinators have to be full-time coordinators to become a qualified organization? And how many cases do you have to be considered full-time?
We require that in order to be considered a qualified organization, there are a minimum of 4 support coordinators who have an active caseload. We do not specify a minimum caseload, but active would imply that they have to at least be serving individuals. The maximum, of course, is referenced to those limitations in the handbook. And I believe the other question was about full-time versus part-time. We're not specifying what that is. We believe that that is implied in common language about the difference in full and part-time.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Our next question is, once everything is finalized, will there be a training on how to complete all of these requirements?
Good morning. We haven't set a training specifically about how to complete all of the requirements. However, as we've stated previously during this hearing, we do intend to have made public some toolkits, checklists, and some templates to support new qualified organizations in their application process. We also encourage you to continue to work with your regional office and attend the waiver support coordinator meetings that are being held. We are in constant communication with our regions, and we will be providing them frequently asked questions, as well as some additional information and clarification as it comes up and as you are working with the region. And if they need any support, they'll be contacting us as well. And also encouraging all waiver support coordinators to continue to look at the APD website for qualified organizations. Again, we will be posting a variety of different tools on that forum, as well as updating our frequently asked questions. And we will be providing advisories when appropriate.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Going to our next question. Is a mentor going to have to be able to handle their own caseload and oversee the caseloads of those they mentor?
The mentor will need to complete the activities of their own caseload. Again, based on the feedback that we got in the last real workshop, we removed any limitations on the number of individuals that a mentee will have and are allowing the mentees to carry a caseload. That will be the decision of the qualified organization as to how many individuals they want to associate with that mentee initially to provide the necessary oversight to those mentees. We do have limitations that the mentor cannot mentor more than 3 individuals at a time, and the draft rule language gives some specificity as to those particular activities that need to be monitored, as well as those activities that could be completed by another associated support coordinator by the qualified organization. There's also, it must be pointed out, there is also no limit to the number of mentors that a qualified organization has. And so it may be a decision on the part of the qualified organization that they have more than one person designated as a mentor. That also could be helpful in those situations that a mentor that is designated for a qualified organization separates from that organization so that there is not an issue about any new employees coming in that will require mentorship. And again, as a reminder, and these were some changes that we made based on the last feedback we got from the workshop, the individuals who are existing support coordinators who come into a qualified organization, their required time frame to be under mentorship is modified, they must be under a mentorship for a period of at least 30 days. But some of those activities that they completed as solo support coordinators, if they can provide proof that they've completed those activities, they will not require the mentorship oversight for those activities or the mentor to sign off on those activities to complete the mentorship program.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dahl. Our next question is, how does the state define mentor supervision when doing contacts? Beyond the phone calls, do the visits with the mentee, etc.?
Again, the expectation is that these individuals that are being mentored will have oversight by the mentor. If anyone has suggested language about how we can clarify that, we would be happy to look at those recommendations.
Thank you. Our next question, does a solo provider lose their consumers when they join a qualified organization?
All of our consumers have choice in the waiver support coordinators and the providers that are providing the supports to them. So if a solo provider does join a qualified organization, that individual may choose to move towards continuing services with that waiver support coordinator through that new qualified organization. So again, the clients can choose. So it's not necessarily a guarantee, but if they do choose to stay and do choose to go to that new qualified organization with that waiver support coordinator, and that qualified organization does allow that individual to maintain that individual on their caseload, then the answer could be yes.
Thank you. Our next question, will APD allow a qualified organization more than 90 days to fill a vacancy if one of the 4 support coordinators leaves?
The language in the draft rule does say that the qualified organization has 90 days to fill a vacancy to make sure that they have the minimum of the 4 support coordinators associated with a qualified organization, which is a requirement. That's one of the reasons why we would encourage, as qualified organizations are forming, to consider the number of support coordinators associated with that qualified organization and consider whether the qualified organization wants to have more than the minimum of 4 to avoid that issue if one of those support coordinators leaves the qualified organization.
Thank you. The next question is, what format will the qualified organization package be submitted? US mail, electronic, etc.?
We would ask that the applications are submitted electronically. And again, we're going to have specific email boxes set up for those submissions when we start accepting those applications, and we'll be prioritizing those applications to be processed at the regional level.
Our next question, can the list of qualified organizations be updated in real time as they enroll for consumers in transition?
Good afternoon. The intention of the agency is to make that real-time tracking. Our regional offices will be tracking all of their qualified organizations that they have received as well as processed, and we'll also be in communication with all of the solo support coordinators to find out what their intentions are, whether it be to join a QO or to become a QO themselves, or if they are interested in voluntarily terminating, we would be coordinating with them as well. So we do expect to have a real-time tracking, and we can absolutely consider making that public.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question. Will any issues be addressed directly with the waiver support coordinators or just the agency heads?
If this is referring to violations, ethical violations that may occur, the expectation is the qualified organization will be working directly with the specific support coordinator with that violation, looking at the violation, talking to the support coordinator to get the information, finding out what the cause of the violation was. That may require some re-education on the part of the support coordinator, developing a corrective action plan to prevent that occurring in the future. And so the specific requirement is for the qualified organization to address that. If there are violations that are noted on the part of APD or some other outside source, those will be notified to the qualified organization to work directly with their support coordinator in addressing those particular issues, as well as the qualified organization, if they become aware of those violations, to not only address those, but report those to the agency within specified timeframes.
Our next question is, how is a mentoring program possible with COVID-19?
That is a really great question. And of course, the way that all of us have handled our work, whether you're working as a support coordinator, a provider of other services, or for that matter, our APD staff, have really been modified through COVID-19. Some of those things that are conducted virtually, if we have a situation as we do now with an increase in the number of COVID cases, will continue to be handled virtually through the mentoring process as well.
Okay, our next question is, if the mentor or mentee don't have 5 support plan meetings of his or her clients during the mentoring program, can the mentee shadow other waiver support coordinators within the qualified organization for the support plan meeting?
The language that's in the draft rules specifies those activities that can be completed either for individuals who are clients of the mentor or the mentee, and those activities that can occur with other support coordinators who work for that qualified organization.
Next question, can APD confirm that 1099 independent contractors will meet the federal IRS guidelines concerning an independent contractor versus W-2 employee, and that qualified organizations who hire 1099 independent contractors will not be in violation of IRS and Florida worker compensation laws? What will APD do if these organizations are not complying with federal and state rules?
Again, the laws of Florida 2020-71 do not specifically spell out a mandate for W-2 employees. However, as with any business organization, the business is responsible for making sure they're in compliance with federal IRS guidelines, wage and hour requirements as well.
Next question, do providers who have been waiver support coordinators for years need qualified clearance scores to remain waiver support coordinators?
I'm not sure I specifically understand what this question is. There is nothing changing about the requirements to be a support coordinator. Through this process, support coordinators will have a choice, and I'm assuming we're speaking specifically here of solo support coordinators, will have the choice of either joining a qualified organization or either joining together to form a qualified organization. But the minimum requirements to be a support coordinator are not changing.
Next question. Can a mentor be paid in addition for the additional duties, or is that negotiated with a qualifying agency?
That would be a decision of the qualified organization itself.
Next question. Why do waiver support coordinators with over 10 years of experience need to be mentored?
Again, just as clarification on their mentoring program, what the mentoring program says in the draft rule is that those support coordinators who have less than 12 months experience are those that are required to be mentored. Those support coordinators who join a qualified organization, who have been a support coordinator for more than 12 months, are not required to participate in a mentoring program.
Next question is there a form that allows the consumer to remain with the waiver support coordinator when the waiver support coordinator joins a qualified organization?
That is a great question. And what any individual who is currently served by a support coordinator, whether it is a solo support coordinator who is forming a qualified organization, or whether it's a support coordinator who is joining a qualified organization, or those support coordinators who are currently working within the confines of an agency, those individuals will be asked if they wish to remain with their current support coordinator, and certainly are able to do so. If they do not wish to do so, then obviously they can choose to change to a different support coordinator.
Next question. When submitting the application to become a qualified organization, are all waiver support coordinators required to have an existing caseload?
The waiver support coordinators must have an active caseload, which includes at least one consumer that they are providing waiver support coordination services. So when submitting the application, the waiver support coordinators who are associated with that qualified organization must have at least one consumer that they're providing services to in order to be counted as a waiver support coordinator associated with that qualified organization.
Next question. How and where will the purged client records be stored? Will APD take them back, or the qualified organization?
The records are retained by the qualified organization for those that are served. Support coordinators have to store those records for the retention period before those are able to be destroyed.
Thank you. That is all the written questions we have that aren't duplicative. So now what we'll do is turn to the individuals who have their hand raised using the control feature in webinar. And what we will do is begin with Erica Lynn. And Miss Lynn is with Safe Harbor Support Coordination. Miss Lynn, one moment while I unmute your line. Okay, Miss Lynn, you should be unmuted, so you may proceed.
Hello, and thank you for getting back to me. Yeah, you still can't hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go
Hello?
ahead. Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much. So I wanted to thank you for getting back to me. I don't know what was wrong with the mute before, but I do really appreciate that. I want to thank APD a lot for all the changes that have been made based on the suggestions, especially the templates for the required policies are going to be a huge help. Allowing the mentors to, or the mentees rather, to have a caseload is excellent. And the FAQs are very helpful, and I look forward to more of them. In regards to the, Patty Rendon was saying that the deadline for getting a new support coordinator online should be reduced from 90 days to 60 days because in order to be consistent with the handbook, but that's not necessary as some coordinators were part-time. So it could be quite reasonable for part-time support coordinators to help out temporarily with the extra caseload during that 90-day period. If the 90 days are the upper limit, and I would prefer it actually be more, but if the 90 days are going to be capped, I would really appreciate having a time limit for APD to process those new applications. In the past, this has sometimes taken much longer than 90 days. I would also appreciate, as others have mentioned, that APD clarify that 1099s subcontractors are going to be accepted. I would recommend that every place where the word employee is used, that be changed to employees and or subcontractors. In regards to the mentor guidelines, I guess I'm one of the few people that supports the 3 years for the mentor guidelines. In my experience, it has taken a minimum of 2 years for support coordinators to get really proficient at what they do. And then I would think they would need a year of being really good at what they do before they could guide somebody else. For 65G-14-003E, this is referring to accidental or incidental unauthorized disclosure of a client's confidential or private information. I have had strict guidelines for my own agency to prevent unauthorized disclosure, but there are providers who routinely send me documentation without being encrypted, and over time, APD staff have also sent me information that is not encrypted, that has PHI in it. What I would suggest is that APD develop a procedure or a policy for what agencies, support coordination agencies should do when they are in receipt of PHI that's been sent unencrypted. For 65G-14.00418G, this is the provision that says support coordinators are only to pursue waiver services for clients that the support coordinator believes address the capacity needs and resources of their clients and are not available through other resources or funding supports, etc. I think this does put support coordinators in a conflict with their position as an advocate for the client. That makes it a conflict, but also it's saying that we're, judging medical necessity for our clients, which is something we are not authorized to do. I guess what I will do is I will think about this and I'll submit some alternate wording if the agency is interested in making this a little less of a problem for support coordinators. I have a question regarding the requirement to have college transcripts sent directly to APD. The FAQ state to send them to the regional office. Does this include the Fort Myers office? And to whom should the transcript be addressed so that it doesn't get lost? And then my last question is, what is the procedure for moving a solo WSC into an agency? In other words, if a solo practitioner wants to join my agency in advance of July 1st, 2021, what procedures should be followed? I'd like this to be a smooth transition, so it would be helpful if the agency provided guidelines. Those are my comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn. And yes, the agency would appreciate anyone who does have alternate wording to the proposed rule language to submit that to the agency following the hearing. And regarding the other questions, we'll move to our panelists regarding the college transcripts, who to send to in Fort Myers.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn. That was a very good question, and we'll make sure that moving forward, we have a specified designated person for those to go. As I said, we're going to be setting up specific email addresses for the applications themselves, but understand when the transcripts are coming in that they do need to go to a designated person so that they do not get lost and do get associated with those applications themselves. So that was really great feedback, and we'll certainly look into that, as well as your recommendations for some procedures for those solos that may wish to join your qualified organization. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dahl. All right, and next we will move to anyone who has their hand raised. We have a few individuals have their hand raised who have already spoken, so it's possible that there's duplication. But next we'll move to Veronica Neria. Ms. Neria, you did have an opportunity to speak before. You may accidentally have your hand raised. You are self-muted.
I had my hand raised earlier and I went ahead and just text my question, so we're good.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on.
Thank you.
And next we'll move to Trey Nelson. Trey, if you could provide your affiliation for the record. Mr. Nelson, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And again, Mr. Nelson, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Next, we have Pamela Shore. Ms. Shore, if you could state your affiliation for the record. Ms. Shore, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Ms. Shore, you're unmuted, but we can't seem to hear you. And again, Ms. Shore, you're unmuted, but we can't seem to hear you. We can try to come back to you if their time permits. So we will move on. Next, we will move on to David Keith. Excuse me, David Keith just unraised his hand. Let's see here. Next, we will move to Almina Gordon. Almina Gordon, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment.
Hi, yes. Good afternoon. How's everyone doing?
Good. And if you could state your affiliation for the record.
Yes, I'm with Adequate Social and Community Services. I serve there as a waiver support coordinator. I do have two mixed questions. As a qualified organization of having at minimum 4 employees, how does the agency expect for the organization to compensate employees that do not have a caseload because they have not been selected by the med waiver recipient? Or as a qualified organization of having at minimum 4 employees, would the med waiver recipient select the qualified organization and then the qualified organization assign the med waiver recipient to the qualified WSC? Those are the two mixed questions that I would kind of like clarity on, or if we need to make some kind of adjustments to the wording in the iBudget handbook or our new ruling, that would be great. Thank you.
The requirement for the minimum of 4 support coordinators is in the rule. If I was following your question correctly about the selection of individuals, of course, that is the choice of the person themselves who they wish to be as their support coordinator. Again, just as clarification for any existing support coordinators who wish to join an existing agency who is applying to be a qualified organization, or solo support coordinators who are wishing to join together to become a qualified organization. Those individuals served by that support coordinator on an existing level will be given the option of remaining with that support coordinator who is joining a qualified organization, so that individual will have individuals they're serving at the time of hire. However, we want to make it clear that if a solo support coordinator joins a qualified organization, that person must be given the option of remaining with the support coordinator, as well as the qualified organization itself. So we want to make sure that individuals do get that choice, but certainly support individuals who are going to be joining a qualified organization do have the option of remaining with their support coordinator. And again, the requirement for the minimum of the 4 support coordinators is in statute.
Thank you. Next, we will move to Penny Schumann. Ms. Schumann, you're unmuted.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, great, thank you. My question is about the retention of records. Is that decided by the qualified organization where they are kept? Can they be kept in the support coordinator's home? As a solo support coordinator for myself right now, that's where they're at. Can they remain if 4 solo support coordinators join together, or is it mandated that there is a central location that all the records have to be? That's one question. And the other question is, what is the retention period before they can be destroyed?
Yes, and if you'll look in the frequently asked questions that we posted today, I believe there is a question specifically about whether there is a requirement for a qualified organization to have a separate office. There is not. The support coordinators can retain those records. For example, if you had 4 solo support coordinators who have been rendering services independently and have those records retained in their home setting, that can continue to happen if those 4 or 5 support coordinators become a qualified organization. The requirement, of course, is that those records are retained in a safe and secure manner as is required to be in compliance. with HIP, and I believe the record retention period is, I believe it is 6 years.
Thank you. And we just have a few more minutes left in the webinar, so we may be able to get 1 or 2 more people in. Next, we'll move to Veronica Neria. And who provided the comment before? Ms. Neria, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute.
I've already said, I think it accidentally went up when I put my hand down. So I sent my questions and I'm going to send emails.
Thank you very much. And next, we will move to Arlene Paris. And Ms. Paris, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute.
Good morning. I already put my hand down about 20 minutes ago because my question was answered. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Next, we can move to Alexis Suraz. Ms. Suraz, if you could state your affiliation for the record.
Yeah, hi, hello. Yeah, I'm a waiver support coordinator. I'm a solo provider right now. But my question is in regard to the transition, to the application as a qualified organization, which I want to do that, so that's my purpose. But I have a few persons who has taken the pre-service training, the one that is mandated now, and they haven't been processed as support coordinators. Okay, my question is, for them to join the qualified organizations, do they have to be processed right now as a solo waiver support coordinator so that they can start, working as a coordinator? Because I asked a question a while ago, and they said that in order for the qualified organizations, to qualify, to be approved, all coordinators has to have at least one client. Okay, so how will these people that are just taking the training would be able to have a client? Okay, if the time frame is very short, July, and usually the process to become a solo provider, a waiver support coordinator, takes a few months.
Again, we are prioritizing the processing of the QO applications. I'm not sure if you're an existing agency or if you're forming a qualified organization initially. The requirement is to be qualified as a qualified organization, that there are 4 support coordinators with active caseloads. If you're an existing agency that is smaller than 4 and you're wanting to hire additional support coordinators in the interim, you can do that. The statewide training is still offered by a couple of support coordinators. Again, once the support coordinators are part of the qualified organizations, whenever the training rule, and again, that's a different rule, that's 65G-14, where we will have a hearing next week. When that training rule is finalized, it is going to require that those support coordinators that are associated with a qualified organization will need to complete the online, what we will refer to as level 1 training and the associated competency assessment with that. So those individuals that are, if you're an existing agency and you need to hire additional people, you can do that in the interim. Ultimately, though, all of those individuals associated and those supervisors and managers and directors with direct oversight and supervision, support coordinators in Florida, will need to complete the level 1 training and the associated competency assessment.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. And as she mentioned, the Chapter 10 training hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday, January 27th, 2021 at 10 a.m. You can sign up. There's a registration link on social media, the APD's website, as well as an advisory that was sent out. So you can find that link, register, and attend that. So we are now out of time for today's hearing. I want to thank everyone for their participation in this rule hearing. Again, the agency will accept written comments pertaining to these rules until close of business 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday, January 22nd, 2021 at the email address on the notice of proposed rule, as well as on the webinar screen. Comments received after this time will not be included in the record. The hearing is now concluded. The time is 12:03 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.